Today we're going to start chapter 4, which is sensation and perception. Arnold Bennett states there can be no knowledge without emotion. We may be aware of a truth, yet until we have felt its force, it is not ours. To the cognition of the brain must be added the experience of the soul. And in this chapter, we're going to explore what he is talking about. Because until you have had an experience, and that experience has involved your emotions, you will not remember the experience. There must be an emotion with the knowledge that you have received in order for you to retain that knowledge. So let's proceed. Perception. What is perception? It is the process of creating meaningful patterns through the raw sensory information. It is the first phase in overall thought process and involves the interpretation of sensations. So when we encounter something that we really don't understand or we don't know, our brain will process through all the files that it has, all the knowledge that we've stored in there from previous experiences, from previous encounters, from previous knowledge. And if it cannot find any kind of clues that we've stored in there, then it will continue to process and try to put the clues together. That is the first stage in understanding anything, is perception. The second phase is cognition. Cognition is the way that information and knowledge comes to be known. This is through the actions of perception, all that knowledge that is being researched through in our brain. It'll go through that process. It goes through reasoning and intuition. Cognition is really the way we think, we learn, and we form memories and we make decisions. If we don't understand something, we can't really make any decisions at all. Decisions need to be made based on knowledge. Perceptual influences. What influences our perception? One is the type and level of the stimulus. Is it something that we like? Is it something that we're interested in? If it's something we don't like, then it may not have as much of an impact on us as if we liked it. If we like it or we have an affection toward it, it's going to influence us stronger. The person's past experience. Once we have experienced something, that knowledge is inside of us. It's in our brain. The emotion that was tied to that experience is there. So when something like that happens to us again, we may respond in the same way that we did the first time. Your past experiences is very important to how you're going to respond to things in the future, or how you even handle a situation in the future. Your level of attention to detail. As designers, we are trained to be attuned to detail, to look at detail. However, some people are not. Our level of attention to detail is dependent upon how much information we retain or what type of information we retain. Such as, if I am a medical doctor and I witness a wreck and people are injured, I might be more attuned, more interested in what happened to the people in the cars. Where if I am a police officer, I might be more interested in how the wreck happened. I'm going to record those details differently because of my training, the detail that I would be interested in, and past experiences. Our level of attention to detail depends upon where our interest or our area of expertise. The fourth one is our readiness to respond. If we care about a situation, we will be very willing to respond. If we're not, we may hold back. It depends on the situation. Do we want to get involved? As we talked about before with the crowding situation, we may not want to get involved if there's a big crowd because we know that crowds can become volatile. So it depends on the situation. It depends on our willingness. It depends on how much we care about that situation. Our level of motivation. I guess this one is really about caring because if we care about something, we're going to be motivated to be there, do something about it. If you don't care, you're not going to be motivated to do anything. Our current emotional state. How many times do we get up in the morning and we're just not in the mood to go to school? Or we're not in the mood to do our hair or put our makeup on or shave or whatever if we're talking to guys. Our current emotional state also plays an important factor into how we perceive things. If you don't feel good, you may not even care. I keep using that word care, but you may not even want to look at anything or be involved with anything. Our emotional state plays another factor in how we perceive different situations. Visual clues are also very important to perception. And if we look at this image, what do you see? For me, it's a very long corridor. It's very boring. It has places to sit on the left-hand side, but it is boring. And also, I would be standing there thinking, oh my goodness, my gate is at the very back. And I'm standing at gate 1 and I have to go to gate 99 and I don't see any end to this corridor. For me, this is gloom and doom. Yes, there's a people mover here on the left, but I know that I've got to drag my bags and myself all the way down that corridor, and it's not very pretty, and I just am worn out before I start the journey. However, in this situation, it's totally different. Now, this is the airport in Dubai, and they have used things in the environment that causes us to not start off with a bad attitude. What they've done is they've made some curves in the path, which allows us to see segments of the path and not the whole long corridor. It's not that hard to do. They've added plants, which gives us a open, fresh feeling. Plus the windows, how they've wrapped the windows up the roof. Yes, we have columns, we have the structural features, you can see the air conditioning ducts, but this is bright and pretty, where this one is kind of dark and yucky and basically depressing. Where this one is bright and pretty, they're giving us information, what time the planes are leaving. We know how to gauge things. They're giving us enough information that we can make decisions. Do I have time to stop and get a cup of coffee on the way or stop and get a snack before I have to get to my gate? Can I stop and go to the restroom? What kind of time do I have? They're giving us proper information. Do I need to turn around and go back the other way because they've changed the gate? In the previous one, we don't have any of that. Not only is it dark and depressing, but they're not giving us enough information to make wise decisions. This is very important to the comfort level of people. The brighter we can make it, the more we can bring the outdoors in through plants and landscaping and stuff like that, the information that we can give the people, the breaking up those long corridors will absolutely help anybody. This is basically what Lynch would call a node. It's a stop along the way. It's somewhere where people can sit down and relax their legs and kind of gain their thought and catch their breath, and you're giving them a place to relax in so that the journey is not so unbearable. Perception and design. We as designers must understand that how people perceive their environment is very important to the design process. These 4 images that are on this page show us the same image taken from the same place at 4 different times of the year. Which one is the least appealing? For me, it's the one on the top right-hand corner. The two on the bottom, they're brighter. The one on the lower left-hand corner is still kind of dull looking. Even though the sun is bright, it's still dull looking. For me, truthfully, I think it's the two on the left-hand side. And I really think the one on the top left, for me, is the better of the two. Even though the tree in the center, that real green tree, tends to wash out at the top. The colors are good. However, there's more color in the one at the bottom. You'll see more reds, which of course I'm drawn to. Y'all know that. But these two are crisper. They're fresher feeling. They feel good. We've got to understand as designers that overall impressions of environments are important to the way we design and what we give to people and the way they perceive them. We've got to understand that. What is the process of perception, of understanding our environment? First thing is perceptual set. This is the sum of one's assumptions and beliefs that leads to a predetermined expectation with regard to the perception of certain objects or characteristics within particular context. For instance, if you walk into a room and it has a toilet and a bidet and a lavatory, you would not say, "Oh, I'm in the kitchen," because those are not findings that you would put into a kitchen. They are things that you would use in a bathroom. We know that so that when we see those things, we can say, "Oh, I know what this is." That is a perceptual set because we're looking at the different objects and the characteristics of those objects and the context within which we would use those. That is perceptual set. Perceptual expectancies are the perceptions based on previous experiences and are based on a context. As I told you before, I had a friend that would scare me really bad, and she was always joking and teasing. But because of those teasings and those jokes that she played on me, I now know that when I go to a movie theater and there is a suspenseful scene, I am not going to sit there and be quiet. I'm going to scream. Everybody around me is like, "What is going on with her?" That is what's happened because it's based on a previous experience. And there's a certain context within which I will respond. Perceptual consistency. This is based on size, shape, brightness, or color. And it helps us to understand our environment. And we're going to talk about this in the next slide. We have this top row of fruit. You can see in the bowl on the right, clearer color because it's white light. And then we get bluer light and bluer light. But with all these LEDs we're getting, our color is being manipulated. And you can see this just in this bowl of fruit. The one on the left has the most white light, which gives us truer color. When you get to the other end with the blue, the reds become purple. It's not consistent in color, which many times can throw people off. The one at the bottom is dealing with shape consistency. If I said, "What shape is a door?" you would immediately say, "Well, it's rectangle." But if we look at the other three images there, we can see that depending upon how far it's open, they're different shapes. But we know the door to be a rectangle. When we say door, it's a rectangle. But truly, looking at it from a different way, the perspective of it may cause it to be a different shape. Shape consistency is also very important to us. Size consistency. We know that this guy in the background is not really being held by the guy in the foreground. He's as big as the guy in the foreground, more than likely. So we know that this is just an illusion or a trick. It's trick photography. Size consistency. We understand sizes. We know what they are. And it also helps us in perceiving things. Clementine Hunter was a painter that did primitive paintings. And what I mean by that is she did paintings that were like a child. Personally, I don't know that any one of us sitting in this room could paint like this or draw like this because we have been taught perspective drawing. All of this drawing is just the way she sees it in her head. Now, the church has a little bit of perspective to it, but truthfully, nothing else does. She's just layered things so that it looks like you can see the hill in the background and the lake below, but it's the way she sees it because she hasn't been taught. I mean, even look at the steps going up to the door of the church. They're not drawn properly, but they're the way she has perceived it. She understands it. So she's drawing it the way she understands it. Now we're going to talk about selective attention. And I love this little cartoon where he says to his mother, I did not hear you calling. I cannot listen to everybody who yells at me. You know, as a child, we all had selective listening. If we were doing something fun outside and our parents were calling us, we would just ignore it and go on. And then your mother would come after you and go, Sarah, why in the world are you not listening to me? I didn't hear you, Mommy. All the time we heard her, but we were busy playing in the dirt or busy playing dolls or whatever, and we did not want to listen and we neglected it. So selective attention is focused on one attribute within a scene and neglect other less important aspects of that scene. So let's look at another example of selective attention. In this image, what do you see first? Some of you may see the movement of the shoulders. Some of you may see the movement of the hands. However, when I first saw this, I was immediately drawn to the red jewel on their dress because I'm drawn to red. Some of you may have seen something else, but you are drawn to something. And it's usually what you are interested in, what's sensitive to you. Another example of selective attention. Perceptual consistency must be congruent with how a person understands the world. Our culture and personality will influence this perception. In this image, do we really have blue chocolate chips? I don't think so. But in this image, they're blue. Could we have blue chocolate chips? Yeah, maybe we could take white chocolate and dye them blue. And truthfully, this isn't all that yuck because we're used to M&Ms and they're different colors. We know that it could be chocolate. One time when I was babysitting my cousins, I made them hot dogs. I decided to split them open and put mashed potatoes down the middle. Now, why I did this, I have no idea, and it sounds horribly yucky. I didn't just serve the potatoes, like white mashed potatoes. I colored them green. Well, when I served them the hot dogs with these green potatoes in them, they were all going, ooh, yuck, this looks awful. We're not going to eat this. And I said, guys, it's only potatoes. But when we are used to mashed potatoes being white or off-white, we don't want them green or blue or red. And we would sit back and go, I'm not going to eat that. That consistency of color, the consistency of texture, the consistency of shape, the consistency of size, it all has importance in how we perceive our environment. Our culture will play a role in this, and so will our personality. Now, somebody with an outgoing personality would probably say, I'll eat that. No big deal to me. Then somebody else may go, ooh, no, I'm not going to do that. Somebody that's very reserved and kind of introverted, they may go, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that at all. So it depends on how we perceive things and our personality, our culture. What are our perceptual responses? There's basically four that we're going to look at here. One is we focus our attention on a small, manageable portion of an area. We want to see the specific details. If we look at a large painting or a large picture of something, we will tend to focus in on one thing, especially if we don't know what it is. We will focus in on one area until we can figure out those little details, and then we'll move on to a bigger area. We then will focus our attention on the overall scene to try to make sense of the whole context. So this would be more of a vast expanse of our perception. Habituate. We've talked about this one before. This is when we get used to a particular stimulus in an environment. When that stimulus has been there for a period of time, we'll get accustomed to it being there. So the level of intensity will go down. However, if we go in and we move that stimulus, just move it around in the room or change it out, then the level of intensity of that object becomes greater because it's been changed. As long as it stays where it is, that level of intensity is not very great. But if it's moved or if it's changed, then things happen. For instance, if I went into the classroom one morning and I changed out one of the chairs in there and it was red, you guys would probably walk in going, why is that red chair here? Otherwise, you'd walk in and go, oh, it's a classroom. No big deal. But if one of those chairs changes colors, it would be like, what's going on here? Habituate. If we leave it there, we get accustomed to it and we don't even think about it. Environmental numbness. Environmental numbness is the state of being unaware of one's environment until it or something in it changes. If we get used to something, we get numb to it. Habituate, we just get used to a particular stimulus. Environmental numbness sets in when we don't even see it until something has changed. The two kind of work together. In habituate, it's got to change. It's got to be greater. In the environmental numbness, they're basically the same thing. In this environment, you can see that it would be a pretty yucky place to work. It wouldn't be very pleasing. And unfortunately, when people work in environments like this, it can lead to other health issues like alcoholism and overeating, because you get out of there and you feel like, I've got to escape. I've got to get out of here. I mean, think about this. Think about the noise. These people are on the phones. Now, yes, they have headsets on, but they are constantly talking to customers on the phone. So you can imagine the humming noise level of this room. Even though they've got these partitions around they're not even cubicles, they're big group areas. The cubicles are not absorbing much noise. Look at all the lack of storage. It's really bad. It's a big room. It's not well lit. It's not well configured. It is just a big mess. When you get out of this, you would probably feel like breaking free in the afternoon. You can see where these types of environments that have not been well planned and have not been well studied can lead to health issues. Ecological perception theory. This theory is based on the fact that instead of perceiving individual components of an environment, we will organize all of the components into recognizable patterns. So in this environment, if you saw the street, what would you think? What would you think of the people that lived on this street? What would you think of the people? Would you think it was a safe neighborhood? If you do think it's a safe neighborhood, why is it a safe neighborhood? Could it be a safe neighborhood because you don't see trash on the streets? Could it be perceived as a safe neighborhood because all the lawns are well taken care of and the houses are well taken care of? The houses are nice homes. They're not shabby homes at all, right? So we perceive this as being a very safe area. But now let's look at this environment. Oh my goodness, it gives us a whole different perception. If I looked at this street, I personally might not want to walk down this street in the dark. The houses are not kept clean. There's no well manicured yards. The people are parking in the yards, it looks like. You see the ditches. It's just not very nice. Plus, look at the sky, the color of the sky in this, the overcast sky can also add to the feelings that you have about this community or this street. Also, in the previous image, we did not see any telephone poles, right? So it gives us a cleaner look, whereas in this one, we don't have that clean look. We have telephone poles and wires and leaning telephone poles and trash on the ground and shopping cart in front of the house, houses not taken care of, roofs that need to be replaced, houses that are falling down, basically. We don't feel good about this. We would probably think these people are not very good people. But the truth of the matter is, there could be people living on the nice street that aren't very nice. They may be evil, where the people here could be kind and generous. So we cannot judge a book by its cover, basically. Okay, that's the end of part 1. We'll continue with part 2 tomorrow, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I would love to hear your feedbacks in the discussion that I will put up for this section. Thank you.